What a beautiful day it is. May 27th, 527. What do I want to talk about? Paulo Coelho's book. I started reading it yesterday. I'm halfway through with it. He wrote the book in 2 weeks, 100 and some pages. It was published in 1988. These are all details I learned today. I learned that it was published in 1988, and I learned that he wrote it in 2 weeks. I was watching I was watching a YouTube video that featured the author Paolo Paulo Paulo Coelho and Ariana Huffington, the Huffington Post creator. Watching that, I was pretty much kind of like underwhelmed and unimpressed. I was like, wow, these people were just they did something during their lifetime, and now they are world famous. I mean, my point in saying that is that these are just ordinary people, but they had access to extraordinary means. So I think that in a way, Paulo Coelho was destined to be famous. Given his upbringing, he was a middle class, upper middle class, you know, child. It was it was destined. It was for him. He was going to do something that the world would take notice of. I think so. That's kind of the summation. That's kind of what I gathered from what I watched. I was like, oh, you guys had the means to do great things, and you just executed. So, um, for what he did and for what his book means, and for the philosophies and the ideals that are espoused in his book, it seems like he drew from Eastern philosophy, not so much the Western ideals. It's an amazing I'm having an amazing experience of reading the book because I'm confronted with the history of Spain and or rather Europe and Africa, in particular Spain and Morocco. The history of the Moors, the Moorish influence on Spain, is a history that I did not learn in school. And as I'm reading this book, the Alchemist, I am confronted with that history. I'm confronted with a character, Santiago, a young boy who grows up in Moorish Spain, or at least Moorish influenced Spain. That's one point that I'm not sure about the time. When did Santiago live? Because the Moors ruled Spain from 711 to 1492, and I'm not quite sure the book is takes place during that era. So the but that rich history of the Moorish influence is evident. It's present right there. The author Paulo Coelho isn't, he dives right in. He's like, this is Spain. This is Andalusia. Okay, Al Andalusia. He really, calls Spain that, Andalusia, the ancient name, and um, and then he calls in, you know, the Arabs. There's a mixture. There's moments. The boy leaves Spain and from Tarifa in Spain, and he goes to Tangiers, Morocco. I traveled that same route. I didn't know when I traveled from Tarifa to Tangiers. I didn't know that I was following in the footsteps of this fictional character. I mean, I had always heard about the book, The Alchemist, and I had heard that it was a great read and that it's so profound and all of these things, but I never I never knew that I would be following in the footsteps or in the path of the protagonist, the title character. I didn't know that, and that was for me. That's kind of it's not so much synchronicity, but more so it's just something to marvel at. Like, hey, look at that! Oh, what a coincidence! That's interesting. You've gone there. You know those areas. You know those regions. You know exactly what they're talking about in the book. For me, when I was in high school, it was so difficult to get into books. I remember I was in a student at Mr. Smollen's class at Hamilton High School, and he asked us to read James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Although I gained an appreciation for authorship of um, of James Joyce, a man from Ireland, I didn't really have a connection to his work. And so I had to look at him sort of like an abstract, person. I couldn't just say, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about." I had to look at it like, "Oh, look at this figure. Look at what he's experiencing. That's interesting." Certainly what he was writing about didn't perfectly align with my life, but not I shouldn't have said but and because I couldn't see myself in the story, it seemed like something outside of me, something over there. Whereas this story, after having traveled, I'm more I'm more keen on the story. I'm more apt to, pay attention and to continue to read because I'm like, wow, I know exactly what this is about. I lived it. I've been there. So that's a neat little thing. Um, with regard to James Joyce and Ireland, after my travels to Ireland, when I went to Dublin and I saw the world that James Joyce was talking about, I did have, um, I was motivated to buy copies of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, a copy of Dubliners, I was motivated to sit down and read them. I didn't get through them, I didn't finish them, but I certainly felt closer to the author, closer to the stories. But reading Paulo Coelho's book, man, this is I'm quite intrigued with the story because it's fascinating, but also because it resonates with me. It resonates with my own story. You know, I'm I'm in I'm at the point where I'm like, I want 109, to become as famous as Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. In the video I watched today, he said that he sold about 170 million copies of the book, and he wrote it in 2 weeks. I think that's just fascinating. And then the story resonated with people, and so the idea is to do the same. I'm like, yo, I want to do that too. 170 million, my goodness. So in my case, the story resonates with me because there's talk. There's plenty of talk in this book. There's plenty of talk about omens, right? And so um with regard to my story, well, the number 109 or 109, that's my omen. Those are the numbers that I see as I travel, and it's a good omen. It lets me know this is where you're supposed to be. And that's what omens are. They're signs. and they're signs for us to follow. In my case, it's a sign of reassurement, of reassuring. You're right where you need to be. Look, here we go. In alignment. Muktab. Muktab is the Arabic phrase that means it was written in the book, in the Alchemist. Muktab is referenced. And then the talk of the universal language. See, 10.9 for me is the universal language because I think the universal language is math, is numbers. And so 10.9 just matches up with that, perfectly. Muktab. The fact that I've lived in the Middle East, so I can draw from those experiences. The fact that I can draw from those experiences makes the story of the alchemist come to life for me. I see it. I see it clearly. The characters, those moments, the moments when something happens, something occurs that sparks an ideal. It makes him think of one thing. It makes him think of another thing. It reminds him of something else. Those moments. It's so well written because that's just how life is. You see something that reminds you of something else. It's fascinating how the story is written because it's written, it depicts how the mind works, how one thinks, what leads one to think, how one feels in certain moments, and it's beautiful. It talks about decision making and it talks about how to look at one's circumstances. In one sense, you can look at yourself and say that you're a victim, but in the other sense, you can look at yourself, well, I'm an adventurer. And I know I've had plenty of experiences along my life's adventure when, yeah, I could have called myself a victim. I was in Turkey. I was swindled out of $600. I was in Ethiopia, swindled out of $150. I was in Cuba, swindled out of $250. I was in I was in Mexico and the taxi driver tried to get me for maybe $20, $10 to $20. I was in the Philippines and I certainly was swindled out of $20. I handed a $20, the equivalent of a $20 bill, like 1,000 peso bill, and I got counterfeit money in exchange. I didn't know that it was counterfeit until I went to the mall and they told me you can't buy anything with this. This money is fake. I said, "What?" That's um in those moments you can either be a victim or you could become an adventurer. Oh, look at what I learned. Look at how interesting this place is. They're just out here trying to take advantage of me. And look, I'm so I've been so successful that I am their target. I mean, you don't want to just go throughout your travels always being a target, but look at it as an adventure. Wow, I've got what they want. I've got to be crafty and protect myself. I've got to be I've got to be I've got to be more clever. So the book talks about that, making decisions and seeing yourself as uh well, what is it? Not pitying yourself. That's what it was referring to. That reminds me of the Jay-Z's line. I can't recite it. I can't recall it at this moment, but he said something about I never felt sorry for myself. That's what he said. Something along those lines. Yep. So it's a fascinating story, and it resonates with me very deeply because of my travels, because I can see myself in the character. Um, yeah, I see a reflection of myself in the book. those omens, the Arabic, you know, uh, customs and lives. And I like the part. I like the fact. See, I don't study the Quran because I don't know. I just neglect the study. Honestly, that's what it is. Because I imagine you don't have to be a Muslim to study the Quran. If I were to say that, I mean, nah. A Muslim is one who submits to the will of God. A Muslim has the duty to educate oneself. So there's no information that is that should be inaccessible to a Muslim. And so the idea that I don't know the Quran, you know, is one that falls on, my lack of submission, I suppose. But I don't I don't identify as a Muslim. I'm a Christian, but that doesn't even matter because being even Jesus was a Christian. I'm just babbling and going on and on and on. And I think that's another idea that I found interesting about the book is like um, you can find so many exceptions to whatever statement that you make. That life is such a mystery that yeah. See, I didn't even complete the thought, but I know what I want to say now. Um, Oftentimes, no. There was the movie Four Rooms, starring Ted Roth. Bruce Willis is in it, Madonna, and they had a number of different directors. They have four different scenes directed by four different directors. The final scene is directed by Quentin Tarantino, if I'm not mistaken. Anywho, Quentin Tarantino's character, he's a big shot director, I think, in Hollywood. He says that there's a famous quote that he remembers. It says something to the effect: he says his grandfather said, "The less apt a man is to make declarative statements, the less apt he is to look a fool in retrospect. The less likely a man is to make a declarative statement, the less apt he is to look a fool in retrospect." I love that quote because I'm not a man who commits. I don't find myself committing to things. See, there are exceptions to that statement as well. I make commitments. What am I talking about? I can't characterize myself as a man who doesn't make commitments. What I try not to do is make declarative statements. Because the exception can become, you know, known, and when you make a declarative statement, you know, the opposite can become true. Man, anyway, it's fascinating. The reason why I brought up declarative statements is because life is a mystery. Albert Einstein said that. Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist also, alludes to that. If it doesn't say it, directly, it certainly suggests that life is a mystery, and so beautiful experience, beautiful mystery, and so I didn't know exactly what I wanted to talk about when I started recording, but look at this. I actually had something to say about the book, The Alchemist. So I'm still reading it. I'm at the halfway point right now. I think I might spend the rest of my evening reading it. I'll get a little bite to eat too, and then that'll be it. This is IC 10-9 on this beautiful afternoon, talking about The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. Peace and blessings, and I'm out.